So we may feel discouraged, but don't necessarily need to feel discouraged, because this is probably one of the most important works we will ever do.
Oh, especially in this day and age. And I firmly believe that, because we're not always with our children. Our children are at school, or they're away from us, or in different scenarios. We have to arm them in such a way and call upon Heavenly Father's help to be with them and help lodge those messages that we've given. And I know that that occurs.
Wonderful.
I think part of this too, as we put it into heaven's help, is as we help our young people understand that this is a part of life of progression. I think sometimes our young people get a message of perfection rather than progression. We do that with different parts of the gospel sometimes, right? So I can say in a Sunday school class, hey, I'm not as patient as I need to be. And everybody nods their head and says, yeah, Brother Carol, yeah, me too, right? We're okay with patience being something of progression. What if I raise my hand in a Sunday school class and say, sometimes I struggle with sexual maturity or sexual purity. Whoa, hey, you're on your own there, right? We don't bring that into that idea of progression. And so part of this too is how we respond to our young people as they make mistakes, or as they take some steps. That those teaching moments may come when they're in that growing and that progressing and that maturation process. Right. And that's a big part too of them understanding how to respond in those moments.
Well, and you bring up something I absolutely wanted to discuss with you too. So often, at least my experience, we seem to have this tone or this feel around sex and sexuality that's shameful, that's dark or dirty, and yet I think it's in such quite contrast from what the gospel teaches about how beautiful and sacred, not just sex is, but the marriage relationship and how it should be. So I'm wondering if you could speak to this tone of what do you think the gospel tone around healthy sexual intimacy is, and compared to the world's tone, or even maybe some of the tone that we see in the church. I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
My response was back to that idea of that kind of physical fragmentation and spiritual fragmentation. If we start to feel like sexuality is not spiritual and is not a part of a spiritual life, that's where I think it's very easy then that if the only message, I think this is a real challenge for us right at this time, because we're so aware of the threat and risks of pornography and inappropriate sexual expression. But if the only talk our young people hear about sexuality is around temptation and transgression, they will start to develop this idea that this is dirty, this is wrong, and then as they start to deal with their own sexual nature, interests, and curiosities, they now have to wrestle with, then am I wrong? Am I dirty? Am I sinful? Working a lot with young adults and young marrieds. This is an area where many of our young marrieds struggle. The phrase they use sometimes is it really okay to go from pecs to sex? Right? You're just supposed to have those little kissing pecks, and now and how was something that was wrong, and now all of a sudden it's right, and they've started to really get this message that it's wrong, that it's dirty, that it's sinful. And then the struggle carries on into marriages. And maybe many of us as adults in our own marriages and our own relationships, we struggle with some of this too. And there's this fear of, is this right, is this wrong? And instead of looking at what does it do for the relationship, we get very behavioral, we get very physical, as if there's just a list. And then the young people are always asking the questions, what's the church's official stance on, right? And they put in the behaviors. And they say, no, you've lost the whole relationship focus here. Right. This is for you as a couple to prayerfully make decisions in your relationship of what fits in your relationship. And the whys matter so much here, not just the whats. And all of that has to be, can we convey that message that that part of themselves and that part of life and that part of marriage relationships, it's not wrong and it's not dirty. And it is back to the testimony of what this is intended to be in God's plan. And that involves the enjoyment of our bodies and the sensations and experiences and responses. We're created in the image of our heavenly parents. That doesn't just mean we look like them. That means we function like them. We respond like them. It's a grand part of the life they live, and our heavenly parents rejoice when we experience that in the right and proper ways.